Hey guys, tonight, we're going to step quietly through the foggy streets of the past and follow the dusty footprints left behind by the men of medieval times. Not knights in shining armor or kings with flowing capes, but the average man, the farmer, the craftsman, the baker, the soldier returning home with worn boots and soot on his face. You're going to stand next to him, walk with him, work with him, and understand inch by inch what he truly looked like. And here's your not-so-gentle medieval reality check. If you were dropped into his world right now, you probably wouldn't even make it to lunch. From the moment you opened your eyes, everything would be heavier, hungrier, rougher, and infinitely less forgiving than the clean comforts you know. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still with me, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Drop it in the comments. I always read them. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice about him is his frame. He's not towering. In fact, he's probably shorter than you expect. Maybe 5'6" if he's lucky. Some come in closer to 5'5", others hover just above 5 feet. Rarely taller than 5', unless he's been well fed from birth, which is extremely rare. Height isn't a symbol of power here. It's mostly a sign of luck, good harvests, steady meat, fewer diseases. You follow him into the early morning light. His boots are caked in mud from yesterday's work in the fields. His tunic, stitched roughly from homespun wool, hangs loose over a coarse linen shirt. The fabric itches. Everything itches in this time. There's no cotton, no fleece, no softness. You watch as he tosses on a hooded mantle. It's more to protect from rain and wind than for warmth. He doesn't own a closet of coats. He has one. Maybe two if he's fortunate. They're mended, often patched with care, sometimes handed down from a father or older brother. Nothing is wasted, not even old clothes. As he steps outside, you walk alongside him, seeing the way his frame has been shaped not by workouts or sport, but by function. His arms aren't bulging, but they are strong. His hands are thick with calluses. His fingers are rough-stained from soil and years of gripping tools. There's a line of dirt under his nails that never really goes away. He walks with a heavy gait, not because he's slow, but because the world he lives in resists every step. Roads are muddy or rocky. Shoes are flat, hard, unsupportive. Every walk is a small strain. His calves are strong. His back is tight. His knees are older than his age. He looks older than he is. That's the truth most don't want to admit about medieval men. If he's 28, he might look 40. The sun has worn his skin thin. Wrinkles crease his brow and the corners of his eyes. His face is weathered from years of wind and dirt and winter. There's no skincare routine, no sunscreen, no dentist. His teeth, if he still has most of them, are likely yellowed, worn, flat, maybe chipped. Gaps are common. Toothaches are worse than a curse. They're slow, lingering threats to your entire health. But despite all this, there's a kind of rugged resilience to him. His jawline is square, his cheekbones prominent partly from genetics, mostly from leanness. He's never been soft. He doesn't have the luxury of spare fat. Every calorie has a job, and his body burns through them with relentless necessity. His hair is thick but tangled. Cut bluntly with a knife, maybe trimmed by his wife, or a friend who knows enough to keep it manageable. It's greasy more often than not. He bathes when he can, but not daily. Water must be hauled, firewood burned, and time is precious. His beard grows in uneven scruff if he's a laborer fuller, if he's older or it's winter. Shaving is not an art here. It's a chore. Razors are rare, expensive, dangerous. Most men just let it grow. You walk behind him now into the fields or toward the village forge. Wherever he goes, the people recognize him, not because he stands out, but because he belongs. He looks like everyone else, compact, functional, sun-worn. They nod, they share bread, they lend tools. This world isn't built for glamour. It's built for survival. And his body is living proof. You begin to notice other details. His shoulders are uneven from years of carrying tools or sacks on one side. His spine curves slightly. His fingers are bent at strange angles, maybe from breaks that never healed right. His nose may have been broken once, maybe twice. That sort of thing happens when you live in a world without doctors, when even a brawl or accident becomes a permanent mark. He doesn't have time to be vain. Vanity is for kings, knights, and paintings, none of which concern him. He knows his worth by what he can do with his hands, not how he looks in a mirror. In fact, he might not have seen his own reflection in weeks, unless he caught a glimpse in a pool of water or a polished plate. Yet he still carries pride. In his posture, in his gait, in the way he sharpens a blade or repairs a fence. That pride doesn't come from appearance, it comes from usefulness, from being able to provide, to endure, to outlast another harsh season. You look into his eyes, and they tell you everything. They're quiet, alert, and tired. Not the kind of tired that sleeps off in one night, but the deep kind. The kind that lives in your bones when your life has been nothing but motion, cold mornings, hot summers, and endless aching days. And this is the average medieval man. He's not a knight, not a noble, not a warrior out of legend. But he's real. And tomorrow, he'll wake up and do it all again. You follow him through the still sleepy village, the crunch of frozen grass under his worn leather soles, the only sound besides the rustle of his mantle. The sun hasn't yet cleared the rooftops, and your breath leaves pale clouds in the air. He walks with that same steady stride, the kind that comes from necessity, not leisure. There is no such thing as a lazy morning here. The animals are waiting. The tools need mending. The day begins whether your body is ready or not. He stops at the barn first. The door groans open, and inside the scent of straw and damp earth hits you immediately. He sets to work, pitchfork in hand, clearing muck with practiced effort. His movements are deliberate. He knows how to conserve energy. There's no flourished motion, no wasted breath. Every movement is a compromise between strength and exhaustion. As he works, you watch his posture. His back is straight, but not stiff. The muscles along his arms and shoulders shift beneath his tunic, not bulky, not defined in a modern sense, but dense and hard-earned. This isn't gym muscle. This is practical muscle. The kind you earn carrying pails, swinging tools, and walking miles every week. His frame tells you more about his life than his words ever could. And his life shows in his skin, too. It's weathered, not just tanned, but deeply marked. The sun-wined smoke and cold have carved lines into his face that no age alone could explain. His hands are cracked, scarred. One knuckle is swollen and misaligned, an old break, never healed quite right. Another finger has a jagged scar across the top, maybe from a blade, maybe from a barnyard accident. You realize quickly everything he looks like today is the result of what's hurt him, shaped him, demanded something of him. By late morning, he's already sweating through the back of his tunic. His clothes cling to him in places, though he pays it no mind. He pauses briefly to wipe his brow with the back of his hand, then squints up at the sun. His hair, dark and thick, clumps together with dampness. It's been hacked short with a blade at some point, not for style, but for practicality. Lice are a problem, and clean scalps are easier to maintain than long locks. His beard is patchy, about 2 weeks' growth, rough at the edges. Shaving isn't a priority. Soap is too precious to waste on something cosmetic, and razors, if available, are shared. A blade isn't something personal here. It's communal, sharpened with a whetstone passed between neighbors, its edge dulled by wood one day and faces the next. He heads inside for a quick meal if there's food to spare. Bread may be hard cheese. If it's a lucky week, there might be salted meat or leftover stew from the night before. He eats standing up in silence, his eyes already looking back toward the field or forge. His teeth are worn, not rotten necessarily, but dulled and yellowed. There's a gap on the bottom right where one molar gave up the fight. That space hasn't closed. His jaw compensates when he chews, and he's learned to avoid tough roots when they're raw. You wonder if he even remembers what his teeth once looked like. The firelight dances across his face, revealing just how lean he is. Not skinny, but lean. His body carries no extra weight. There is no room for fat in this life, not when food is uncertain. He's not emaciated, but you can see the sharp cut of his cheekbones, the shadow of his ribs under the cloth. He isn't underfed, but he is never truly full either. As the day rolls forward, you notice that every man in the village, young and old, carries similar marks of their world. The teenage boy at the well already has shoulders built from water hauling. The old man mending a cart still walks with the rolling gait of someone who spent decades on uneven ground. None of them are tall by modern standards. Few are over 5'7". Some are barely 5 feet, but none of them are weak. And that's important to understand. Medieval strength isn't about muscle mass. It's about repetition, endurance. The average man might not have broad shoulders or bulging arms, but he can swing an axe all day, walk 10 miles without complaint, carry sacks of grain until sundown. His body is a tool, and it is used every hour of every day. By mid-afternoon, you see him in the field again. Shirt sleeves rolled up, tunic damp with sweat. He's not glamorous. He's not clean. But there's something magnetic about the way he works, quiet, focused, capable. He doesn't glance at his reflection because there isn't one. He doesn't worry about haircuts or tan lines or clothing fits. He wears what he owns, and he is what he does. And perhaps that's what stands out most about the average medieval man. His sense of self is forged, not in how he appears, but in how he endures. His identity is not performance, it's function. He doesn't shape his body to impress, only to survive. As the sun begins to descend, he walks back toward the village, a bundle of firewood on his back. He's tired. You can see it in the slope of his shoulders. But he's not finished. The animals still need tending. The tools still need checking. Supper needs preparing. And maybe, just maybe, there will be time for song or story before the fire dies out. He might not know how he looks, but he knows he'll wake tomorrow and keep going. And in that, he's already more than enough. The sun has dipped low enough now to stretch long shadows across the cottage walls as the man steps inside, carrying the weight of the day on his shoulders, both literally and figuratively. He sets down the bundle of wood without ceremony, rolls his neck slowly, and rubs the back of his hand across his stubbled jaw. The day may be ending, but his body doesn't rest yet. You watch as he strips off his outer tunic, hangs it near the hearth to dry, and pulls up a wooden stool. His undershirt, linen worn thin at the elbows, clings to his arms. You notice the way the fabric reveals his upper body, not chiseled, but corded. Ridges of muscle line his forearms from endless hours gripping plow handles or blacksmith hammers. His chest is broad, but not puffed. It doesn't announce strength, it simply stores it. Quietly. His skin, now lit by firelight, is mottled. Not diseased, but marked. A healed burn near the shoulder. Flecks of old scars, some fine and white, others deeper and more ragged. A small lump on his shin, where the bone once cracked and mended crooked. Each one tells a story, and none of those stories were optional. You don't collect these marks by chasing danger. You collect them by living. He leans down to inspect a small tear in his boot-stitched leather, cracked and hardened by years of wear. It's not the only pair he owns. It's the only pair, full stop. He'll mend it by firelight with a thick needle and coarse thread. His fingers, thick and steady, do the work without hesitation. You see how the pads of his thumbs are flattened, how his nails are chipped. His hands are not ornamental. They are tools, and tools eventually wear down. As the stew pot warms, he helps his son with the firewood, chopping kindling into smaller pieces. With each strike of the hatchet, his shoulders rise and fall in a rhythm so practiced it's almost hypnotic. It's clear his body knows this task intimately. His spine curves slightly to the right as he moves, a tilt probably caused by years of imbalance. You notice how he always leans a bit more into his left leg. That leg must be stronger, more trusted. The other perhaps once injured or just subtly weaker from repetitive strain. During supper, the man eats steadily but not ravenously. You can tell he's used to portioning, measuring hunger, not by how much he wants, but by how much is left for tomorrow. He doesn't talk much. Not out of unkindness, but because his energy is saved. Every word, every motion is a decision. When you live in a body that must work again tomorrow, you learn quickly what to conserve. After the meal, he settles beside the fire with a small knife and a block of wood. Carving, whittling, more movement, yes, but it's different now. Not labor, but something gentler. His hands relax, his posture softens, and you see something rare: stillness. For a few precious minutes, he is allowed to simply exist without serving a function. That's when you begin to notice the subtleties of his face. In the flickering orange light, his eyes seem darker, heavier. The lines around them are deep, not just from age, but from squinting against sun, and smoke from worry, from wind. His brow is thick, his nose slightly off-center, as if it's been broken once, maybe twice. His lips are often chapped, sometimes cracked in winter, but now they rest quietly, slightly parted. He doesn't smile often. When he does, it's small and contained, a flicker more than a grin. But when his child leans against him, or a joke passes quietly through the room, that smile does appear, and for a moment, the whole face softens, the weathered surface yielding to something untouched by toil. His hair, now mostly dry, curls slightly at the base of his neck. It's uneven in length, cut roughly by shears or a sharp blade. Bits of gray are beginning to show near his temples, not enough to age him fully, but enough to reveal time's steady hand. He scratches at the edge of his beard, a gesture of thought more than irritation, and you realize that grooming in his world is utilitarian. Shaving might happen once a week, if that. Haircuts are not about style. They're about hygiene, survival, practicality. Eventually he rises and moves toward the small basin near the hearth. There's just enough water to splash his face. You watch the steam rise as cold water hits warm skin. He wipes his cheeks dry with the hem of his shirt. There's no mirror, no inspection. He knows what he looks like, or more accurately, he knows what he is. And that's the key difference. In this time, men are not judged by symmetry or smoothness or fashion. They are judged by what they can bear, by what they can repair, by how they withstand life's constant chisel. The average man does not look like a portrait. He looks like the road he walks. He lies down on a thin mattress stuffed with straw and wool, curling his arm beneath his head. His body shifts like it's folding into itself, the day's tension leaking slowly into the floorboards. You hear the slight creak of joints settling the long exhale through cracked lips. He doesn't dream of castles or glory. He dreams of a dry roof, of enough food for winter, of tools that don't break, of one more day where his body rises, works, and returns safely. He's not a hero in a tale, but he's real. And the next time someone wonders what men looked like in the Middle Ages, it won't be armor or paintings that answer. It will be this: a face lined with work, a body shaped by necessity, and a soul quietly anchored in survival. The next morning arrives before the sky has even brightened, with the rooster's call echoing faintly through the damp air. You stir as the man rises from his mat, with a quiet grunt, stretching stiff joints and rolling his shoulder until it gives a familiar pop. Sleep is never truly restful in this time, just long enough to stop the ache from turning to injury. He dresses quickly. There's no wardrobe, no fresh set of clothes waiting. He pulls on yesterday's tunic, shakes out the dust, and loops his belt back into place. His boots are stiff from drying by the hearth overnight. As he slides them on, you notice again how worn they are: creased, leather-patched soles, one toe slightly curled from damp and wear. Outside, the village is still cloaked in early mist. The man's breath fogs with every exhale. You follow as he crosses the yard to the small lean-to where the tools are kept. His hand runs over the wooden handles, checking each one for cracks or splinters. These are his companions: the axe, the spade, the scythe, each one almost an extension of his arm. They've shaped his body as much as any bloodline has. Today he's cutting wood, and the rhythm of the axe becomes your heartbeat for the next hour. Each swing is deliberate, not explosive but efficient. You notice the way he plants his feet, a wide stance, knees slightly bent back, straight but not rigid. His core tightens with each strike. He doesn't waste strength. He knows exactly how much force to use to split the log without exhausting himself. This isn't exercise. It's survival, and his body has evolved to meet that demand. You glance at his shoulders, rounded from years of carrying and swinging, but powerful. His upper arms are thicker than the rest of him, his veins visible under taut skin. His elbows are darkened from exposure, and his forearms ripple subtly as he adjusts his grip between swings. This is what strength looks like here. It's not for display. It's not symmetrical. It's earned. As the sun climbs, others pass by: boys heading to the well, an old man leading a donkey, a woman balancing a basket on her hip. You compare them quietly. Nearly all the men share this same wiry build. Not underfed, not sickly, but absolutely lean. Their clothes hang straight, their backs bow slightly from years of lifting, walking, crouching. You start to realize that the average medieval man has no excess. He is built like a rope, strong, twisted tight. He pauses mid-task to drink from a clay jug, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. His jaw is firm, not from clenching, but from use. His teeth, those that remain, are tools too, flattened by coarse bread and years of chewing gristle. There's no sugar to rot them, but age still grinds them down. If he's lucky, he still has most. If not, he's learned how to eat around the gaps. When he smiles, and it's rare, it lights up only part of his face. His lips crack when stretched, and his cheeks pull taut over high bones. His eyes, though, soften when he laughs. Brown-gray or blue, they've seen too much for their age. There are bags under them already. Crow's feet, not from joy, but from years of squinting into wind and smoke. Later, you watch him by the stream, washing the sweat from his face and arms. His ribs show faintly when he bends forward, not from starvation, but because his body carries nothing it doesn't need. You see the slope of his neck, the solid angle of his collarbone. His spine is marked by years of labor, a slight curve, a subtle twist. He moves like someone who has spent too long under weight. But he does not complain. You try to imagine him in modern clothes. Jeans, a t-shirt. The thought is almost jarring. His build wasn't made for softness or fashion. His muscles don't sit neatly under fabric. His posture is uneven, his hands too rough. But in his world, he fits perfectly. Every notch of his belt, every callus on his palm, every scar on his shin, they all belong here. He returns home with a bundle of kindling slung over one shoulder. His children run to greet him, tugging at his sleeves, climbing onto his arms like branches. You notice how easily he lifts them. His arms tighten, but his face doesn't change. He's used to weight. The joy of it, the pain of it, it's all the same to him now. At supper, he sits cross-legged near the fire. The glow highlights the lines etched deep into his face. He's only in his 30s, maybe early 40s, but the way he moves suggests someone older. Time runs differently in his body. Every injury ages him faster. Every hungry season leaves a mark. But he endures. You hear someone ask how old he is, and he shrugs. 36, maybe he says, maybe 38. You realize no one here knows their exact birthday. Time is measured in harvests, in winters, in losses and floods, not in candles on a cake. As the fire fades, he reclines slightly against the wall, his head tilted back, eyes closed. His breathing slows. His chest rises and falls beneath the rough fabric. You imagine his heart beating steadily, just as it did when he woke, just as it will tomorrow. Because the body of a medieval man isn't defined by what it looks like when it rests. It's defined by how it rises, again and again and again. The wind howls outside as the cottage creaks gently, timbers shifting with the cold. But the man is already awake, stoking the fire back to life with one hand, while pulling on his tunic with the other. There's no delay, no time for stretching or slow mornings. The day doesn't wait, and neither does his body. You watch him bend, scoop, reach, all in one fluid movement that speaks of muscle memory, not the kind you train for, but the kind you inherit from habit, from hardship. You notice his silhouette in the firelight, compact, sturdy, never still. His hips are narrow, his legs slightly bowed from years of walking on uneven earth. His feet calloused and wide slide into cracked leather boots that were made for function, not form. He doesn't think about how he looks when he steps outside. He thinks about the tasks ahead. Today, he's helping mend the roof of a neighbor's cottage. The thatch is loose from wind and time, and every able hand in the village is pitching in. As he climbs the wooden ladder, you follow his motions, slow but confident. His knees creak faintly. He's not young anymore, but his balance is sure, his grip firm. From below, you see the way his calves flex with each rung, the way his shoulders shift beneath the wool of his tunic. You can imagine the tension in his arms as he braces himself with one hand and reaches for reeds with the other. On the roof, he crouches easily, his knees folding tightly beneath him. This is not a man who needs space. His body tucks and turns to fit into any corner. He weaves the thatch with fingers nimble despite their thickness. They move not with grace, but with certainty. He's done this before, many times. The skill is etched into the tendons of his forearms. He works beside two others similar in build, maybe an inch taller or shorter. You notice how similar they all are. No one stands out by height or width. These men are built by the same constraints: limited food, hard labor, cold winters, early mornings. If you didn't know better, you might think they were related. But no. It's just that hardship molds the body into a certain shape. Broad through the shoulders, narrow at the waist, strong through the thighs and hands. When they pause for a break, they sit with backs against the chimney stack. One passes a chunk of bread, another pours water from a shared flask. No one checks their appearance. No one smooths their hair. There's no point. They aren't performing for anyone. Their presence is measured in what they've done, not how they're seen. You notice how his fingers tremble slightly when he rests. Not from fear or weakness, but from fatigue, just enough to remind you how hard he's pushed today. His nails are jagged, uneven. Dirt crusts beneath them, impossible to scrub out entirely. His wrists are strong, but the bones near the joint look almost too prominent, as if the muscle never had enough to fully cover them. He's strong, but not well fed. He's durable, but not padded. Later, when he climbs down, you see how carefully he lands. There's a wince, not dramatic, just a slight grimace as he favors one foot. Maybe an old injury. Maybe a twisted ankle from years back. He doesn't mention it. It's not worth mentioning. Pain is a quiet companion in his world, not a guest that demands attention. He spends the afternoon mending a plow. Sitting cross-legged, hammer and file in hand, he sharpens the iron with slow, measured strokes. Sparks fly as metal meets stone. His grip never wavers. You can see every tendon in his forearm shift. With each stroke, the skin darkened from sun and soot, the knuckles scabbed from nicks and burns. He doesn't flinch when the sparks land on his hands. He's long past noticing. You look at his face again. The nose slightly crooked, the brow heavy, the jaw square but softened by wear. Stubble shadows his cheeks and neck. A small scar traces his left cheekbone. He never talks about it. None of them do. It's just one more story left untold, one more reminder that life here isn't just demanding, it's dangerous. And still, there's something gentle in his features when he relaxes. His eyes are focused, sure, but not cruel. When his child comes to sit beside him, he offers a piece of apple and rests a broad hand on the boy's head. His hand dwarfs the child's shoulder, but the grip is light. He knows his strength. He knows how to hold it back. At sunset, you follow him as he tends to the animals. He moves among them with ease, lifting feed, checking hooves, adjusting rope. His body is tired clearly, but it obeys. Not because it wants to, but because it must. Inside again, he peels off his boots, revealing feet hardened by cold and years of work. The arches are flat, the toes slightly curled from poor fit and long walks, but they still carry him. You realize something then: this man's body isn't something he owns, it's something he uses. Day in, day out, for others, for survival, for one more step forward. He doesn't train it. He doesn't pamper it. He just lives in it, and that's more than enough to shape it. And when the fire fades, and he curls beneath his blanket, his back to the wall, knees drawn up slightly against the cold, you don't see weakness. You see a body that has spent every moment in service. And you wonder, could you do the same before the light returns, before the first birds begin to sing? He is already on his feet again. You hear the quiet rustle of cloth as he dresses in the dark, tugging on his threadbare hose and binding them at the knee with rough ties. His tunic slips over his head, and the belt, thick leather, worn smooth by time, is fastened again around his waist. He checks his knife at his side. Not because he expects trouble, but because a blade is as essential as bread. This morning he's walking to the next village to help with a barn raising. It's several miles away. There are no wagons waiting for him. No horse to ride. just his boots and his legs, and a sky that's still holding the last stars of night. You follow him along the muddy path, the frost crunching underfoot, and watch how his body moves through it. He doesn't stride like a nobleman. He trudges deliberate, efficient, tireless. His arms swing just enough for balance. His core stays tight. His breathing settles into a steady rhythm. This is not a man who ever got in shape. This is a man who was shaped by the land itself. When he arrives, there's no pause. The men greet each other with brief nods and pass around tools. The barn skeleton is already rising heavy beams and thatch sweat and sawdust. He slips into position alongside a dozen others and begins lifting. The beams are massive, 2 men to each side braced on their shoulders as they heave it upward. His muscles tense beneath the tunic, the effort showing in the strain of his jaw and the set of his eyes. You can't help but notice how many of the men look like him. Shorter than modern ideals, often below 5'6", with broad forearms, sloped shoulders, bowed legs. Not from deformity, but from decades of repetitive motion malnutrition during growth years, and shoes that never supported a proper gait. Still, they carry that weight. Still, they lift without complaint. After the frame is raised, he climbs the scaffold to help secure the roof supports. His grip is sure, despite the height. Heights don't scare him. What scares him is a weak joint, a slipped knot, an injury that might keep him from work. His hands are dusty, the skin along his knuckles split and healing. But they still move with confidence, tying fastenings, hammering pegs, adjusting weight like he's done it every season since boyhood. At midday, he rests briefly sitting on a low beam, chewing on coarse brown bread and salted pork. He drinks from a skin of water passed around. There's no time for long breaks. The work must finish before sundown. You watch him eat. His jaw works side to side, slow and steady. He favors one molar maybe because of an exposed root or cracked enamel. He doesn't grimace. He simply adapts. Pain has a place in his world. It rides alongside hunger, fatigue, and cold. Always there. Always tolerated. As the sun passes overhead, you catch his profile against the sky, the sharp line of his nose, the angle of his brow, the furrow that rarely leaves his forehead. His skin has a tightness to it, not from youth, but from life outdoors. Crow's feet fan out from the corners of his eyes. His lips are sun-cracked. His beard is scraggly, uneven. Yet none of it makes him seem less dignified. If anything, he looks more like he belongs in this world than anyone else. By late afternoon, he's back on the ground, hauling the last of the hay bales into place. He lifts with bent knees, careful to protect his back. He's learned the hard way what happens when a man lifts wrong. A single pulled muscle can cripple you in a place with no healers, no medicine, no rest. When the work ends and the barn stands solid, the men shake hands, clasp shoulders, offer thanks. He gives a tired nod, wipes the sweat from his temple, and begins the long walk home. No carriage waits. No one's coming to fetch him. His legs must carry him back across the same cold path. And still he goes. You follow behind as the dusk thickens, watching how his shadow stretches long over the frozen ruts. He doesn't walk any slower. In fact, he seems to push harder. The promise of home gives him one more layer of endurance. Back at the cottage, he's greeted with a bowl of broth and a small smile from his wife. He sinks into his stool slowly, the stiffness in his knees more pronounced now. He takes off his boots one at a time and sets them by the fire. His socks are damp. His feet are red at the toes. You notice a limp, just a little one, as he stretches out his legs, probably from the ladder earlier, or maybe the long walk. Or maybe just another thing he won't mention unless it becomes unbearable. He eats quietly, drinks slowly. And when the children ask about the barn, he gives them just enough detail to feel proud of him. He doesn't embellish. He doesn't need to. The work was the story. Later, he sharpens his blade by firelight. The sound of stone against steel is steady soothing. His fingers guide the knife along the edge without looking. He could do this in his sleep. Maybe he has. You study him now in this rare moment of quiet, and you realize nothing about his body is for show. It's a ledger. It records every task, every year, every hardship. His back tells you how many harvests he's survived. His hands tell you how many animals he's fed. His knees how many miles he's walked. He doesn't carry a sword. He doesn't wear armor. But he is without question one of the toughest men you'll ever meet. And he'll rise again tomorrow, ready to do it all over again. Before first light, you hear him shifting under his blanket. There's no alarm, no cock's crow this time, just a body that's been taught by years of repetition when to rise. He sits up, rubs his face with both hands, and slowly works his legs over the edge of the bed. His back protests with a soft crack. His knees follow with dull pops, but he says nothing. Today, he's going to market. It's not a celebration. It's a chore and a long one. He ties his belt wraps a cloak over his tunic and shoulders 2 empty sacks. The weight feels light now. It won't on the way back. As he sets out along the road, you fall into step beside him again. The path is frozen in places, soft in others. He keeps to the edge where the ground is firmer, avoiding the worst of the mud. Every step is familiar. He's made this journey dozens of times in every season, through rain, through snow, sometimes carrying a lamb on his back or leading a stubborn goat. You glance down at his feet. His boots, already patched and worn thin, are caked in layers of dirt and cracked with old creases. The soles are uneven from wear. He walks slightly on the outside edges now, a habit he doesn't notice anymore. His gait is a blend of purpose and compromise. Along the way, he passes other men, some pushing carts, others herding animals, many carrying loads. Nearly all of them are built the same modest height, thick arms, sloping shoulders, legs that look like they've been hewn from tree trunks. Their faces are bearded or shadowed with stubble, their hair cropped short, their eyes quick to scan and slow to blink. There's a sameness that links them, not because they lack identity, but because they've all been shaped by the same conditions. The same hunger, the same cold, the same labor. When he reaches the market, the square is already busy. It's a noisy crush of carts, chickens, baskets, and bartering. You stand beside him as he weaves through the crowd, inspecting goods with a practiced eye. He doesn't speak unless necessary, doesn't smile unless it matters. His jaw stays tight, his brow low. Not in anger, just in caution. He trades eggs for salt, wool for grain. Every item he selects is chosen with care. He presses loaves gently to check their freshness, fingers, the edges of cloth, lifts a jug to weigh it in his palm. This is a man who has no room for mistakes. One bad trade could mean a hungry week. You spot another man across the market, taller, cleaner, clearly a merchant or steward. His cloak is finer, his teeth whiter, and his hands, as they gesture, lack the thickened knuckles and work-swollen joints of the men around him. And you notice how different he looks. Not just in dress, but in posture, in preservation. He is not the average medieval man. He is the exception. The one who eats better rests more lives longer. But your man, mud-streaked, quiet, patient, doesn't envy him. He doesn't even look twice. His eyes are fixed on the butcher's stall, where he's negotiating a small cut of pork. He barters without raising his voice, counts coins with slow certainty, and nods when the deal is done. Then he packs the sack and moves on. You notice again his shoulders. They slope forward a little, not just from habit, but from years of bearing weight. His back has carried tools, timber, firewood, children. His arms hang close to his body. When he stands still, he looks compact, as if he's always bracing for something. On the walk home, the sacks are heavier. One pulls slightly to the left, and you watch him shift it mid-stride, using his forearm to balance the load without breaking pace. His breathing grows louder, but he doesn't slow. He doesn't stop. The sun is higher now, beating down through thin clouds. Sweat forms at his temples. His cloak is loosened. You see the muscles in his legs working with each incline, calves tightening thighs, straining beneath coarse wool. His knees click with every step, but they hold. They always hold. When he arrives home, he sets the sacks down with a quiet grunt, wipes his brow and rolls his shoulders slowly. His shirt clings to his back, darkened with sweat. He doesn't rest. He begins sorting immediately, stacking grain, setting out salt, placing the meat into the larder. Only once everything is stored does he finally sit. His hands hang between his knees, and for a brief moment he closes his eyes. The lines on his face seem deeper in the stillness. He's not old, but he's aged by effort, by years without cushion, by the simple, ongoing task of surviving. And this is what men looked like then. Not like myths, not like carved marble, but like weathered oak and rough stone. Strong not because of what they lifted in a single moment, but because of what they carried every day. No one writes songs about them, but without them, nothing gets built. It's nearing dusk when he finishes stacking the last bundle of firewood and scrapes the mud from his boots on the threshold. The day's labor still clings to him in the dirt on his forearms, the ache in his back, the sweat dried into the seam of his tunic. You can see it in the way he stands for a moment, leaning slightly against the doorframe, catching his breath before stepping inside. His eyes close briefly, not out of exhaustion, but because this right here is the only pause he's allowed himself all day. Inside the cottage, the warmth of the hearth beckons. He sheds his cloak and hangs it near the fire, then moves to the wash basin. The water is cold, drawn earlier, and left to sit, but he splashes it over his face and neck with practiced indifference. He scrubs with a coarse cloth, just enough to clear the sweat and dust, then dries off with the same linen square hung on a peg nearby. There are no soaps, no oils, no indulgent rituals. Clean enough is the goal. Survival leaves no space for vanity. As he eats supper, onion stew, coarse bread, you watch him settle into his seat. His movements are slower now, deliberate. His elbows rest on the table, his shoulders slouched. Not from laziness, but because the day has pressed down on him like the stones in a mill. And now he finally releases the tension inch by inch, breath by breath. He eats with purpose. He doesn't talk unless asked. Every now and then he shares a quiet word with his eldest son or listens to his wife speak of the neighbors. You see how his eyes soften when his children laugh, though he rarely joins in. There's a calmness to him, one that doesn't need to perform joy to feel it. After the meal, he steps outside again, this time not to work, but to look. The moon has just begun to rise, casting silver light across the yard and the path beyond. He stands with his arms crossed, the night breeze tugging at the hem of his tunic. You watch his profile in the moonlight. The square jaw, the strong neck, the slope of his nose bent slightly from some long-forgotten accident. His body, even at rest, holds stories. You see the outline of his shoulders rounded from years of carrying tools, lifting timber, bearing children, half asleep against his chest. His legs, though still strong, now carry a subtle sway, a hint of imbalance from an old strain that was never properly healed. His hands hang at his sides, rough and calloused. The fingers slightly crooked, scarred and cracked from cold, from rope, from blades. He doesn't see these things as flaws. He doesn't see them at all. In his world, his body isn't something to assess. It's something to use, something to keep in motion. If a joint aches, he wraps it. If a muscle twinges, he works around it. Pain is a companion, not an enemy. He wears his weariness like another layer of clothing. You wonder how often he's been sick. The answer is probably more than once and recently. But he doesn't rest unless he must. A fever might slow him down, but not stop him. A deep cough, a limp, a persistent chill, all of it gets pushed aside for as long as possible. He cannot afford to be unwell. Not when the animals need feeding. Not when the roof needs patching. Not when mouths need filling. Back inside, he helps his wife braid dried herbs for storage, his thick fingers surprisingly nimble with the task. You see a different kind of strength now, not just physical, but intimate. Quiet patience. The steadiness of someone who does what needs doing, even when no one sees. When it's finally time to sleep, he doesn't undress fully. He peels off his tunic, folds it once, and lays it by his bed. He stretches out on the straw mattress, pulling a rough blanket over his body, his legs still bent from habit. You notice a fading bruise on his shin, the familiar discoloration that comes from bumping into a cart or a doorframe or the corner of a wooden stool in the dark. He closes his eyes. His breathing deepens. And as he drifts into sleep, the years of effort settle back into his body. His chest rises and falls. His hands, still half-clenched, finally relax. And in the quiet, you see him for what he truly is. Not just a man of his time, but a man held together by grit, repetition, and an unspoken agreement with the world around him. He'll keep going as long as his body lets him. He isn't flawless. He isn't fair-faced or polished. But he is real. A man not remembered in history books, but who built the world we walk on today. One day at a time. One breath at a time. One step closer to dawn. Dawn filters in once more through the cracks in the wooden shutters, and the rhythm of his life resumes like a song on repeat. There's no weekend, no holiday, just another day in the cycle. He rises slowly, shoulders rolling forward, as he shakes the sleep from his limbs. You hear a faint groan as he straightens his back. That sound is normal now, a part of him like his breath or heartbeat. This morning he's headed into the forest. Firewood is running low, and the colder winds of late autumn have begun to bite. He ties his cloak tighter around his chest and hoists the axe over his shoulder. His grip is firm, his stance wide. You watch his boots crunch through leaves and frost each step deliberate. The weight of the axe shifts against his spine, but he doesn't adjust. His body has long since accepted burden as its default. The trees crowd around him, and he moves with the caution of someone who knows these woods intimately, but also knows how quickly they can turn on you. His ears are always alert. His eyes scan the trail. His hands, large and blunt-fingered, tighten instinctively as he selects the first tree. Not too young, not too old, just enough to burn through a week of cold nights. He removes his cloak, rolls his shoulders, and begins. The first swing lands with a dull thud. The next comes sharper. A rhythm forms, strike, breathe, strike again. With every blow, you see the ripple through his back. The muscles are thick, but not showy. They coil and twist beneath the tunic, shaped less by training and more by necessity. He pauses every few strikes to shake out his arm or adjust his stance, but he never fully stops. Sweat gathers on his brow, even in the chill. You see it glisten on his temples, trace a line down his cheek. His lips are pressed into a line. His breath clouds the air in front of him. And still he swings. Still he cuts. After the tree falls, he kneels to trim the branches. His hands are sure even when they blister. His fingers bleed easily now. His skin's been split so many times it never fully toughens. But he wraps them in cloth and moves on. The pain doesn't stop him. It barely registers anymore. He lugs the logs back toward the path in multiple trips, shoulders hunched forward, legs steady. Each log digs into his back, pressing against the bone beneath. But he carries them all one by one, piling them near the cart. He doesn't rest until the last load is strapped in. Later on the way home, the wheels of the cart creak beneath the weight. He walks beside it, guiding it carefully around rocks and holes. His hand rests lightly on the edge, just enough to keep it steady. His other hand occasionally wipes sweat from his eyes or resecures the knot on his belt. Back at the cottage, the children come running out to help unload. You see the smallest one struggle with a log, and the man kneels beside him, correcting his grip gently, then lifting it together. There's pride in his eyes, but also caution. He knows how easily a back can break, how a simple twist can change everything. You notice how his face now seems permanently furrowed. Not from anger, not even from worry. Just from life. His brow has a natural crease. The corners of his mouth droop slightly, not in sadness, but in gravity. And when he looks up, catching a glimpse of the fading sun, he narrows his eyes against the glare eyes that have spent decades reading the sky like a book. By supper, he sits back against the wall, legs stretched out, ankles crossed. His shirt is damp again, clinging to the ridges of his stomach, not firm, but dense. The kind of strength that doesn't flex, but supports. He scratches his neck, then leans over to trim a splinter from a wooden spoon with his knife. Even in rest, his hands work. After eating, he rubs his knees absent-mindedly. You can tell they hurt. Every bend is an effort now, but he doesn't complain. He never has. The wear is just part of the cost. He lies down earlier tonight, one arm folded beneath his head, the other across his chest. The fire's glow washes over his face, revealing the uneven texture of skin, old sunburns, healed, scrapes the shine of oil and ash that never quite washes away. And still you realize this is not a broken man. This is a lived-in one. A body not past its prime, but forged through it. He is what strength really looked like. Not sculpted, not idealized, but useful, purposeful, real. And when he exhales deep and slow into the dark, it's not just sleep he's falling into. It's earned peace, even if only for a few hours. Morning comes again, draped in gray clouds and the smell of damp earth. The man doesn't rise with urgency today, not because there's less to do, there never is, but because his body needs a moment. He shifts beneath the blanket, eyes open, but still. His joints feel heavier than usual, as if the straw mattress absorbed none of yesterday's effort. Still, he swings his legs over the edge of the bed. Still, he stands. You can hear the faint crackle of the hearth, someone having already stirred the coals back to life. He steps into the warmth and stretches one arm at a time, his shoulders creaking like the beams above. The lines on his face are deeper in the morning light. His beard is patchy and gray in places now. He's not an old man by number, perhaps in his early 40s, but his body tells a different story. Today is a repair day. A fence has come loose on the far edge of the field, and if it isn't fixed, the goats will wander again. So he gathers his tools, mallet nails, spare wood. Everything is worn but reliable, much like him. The field is soaked with dew and the mist hangs low along the fence posts. He kneels without hesitation despite the ache in his knees and begins replacing the broken slats. You notice how methodically he works. Each swing of the mallet is measured deliberate. His hands, though battered and stiff, still know exactly how much force to apply to avoid splitting the wood. You study the way his forearms tighten as he hammers. The cords of muscle twist beneath pale skin that's darkened at the edges from sun and dirt. His fingers are thick, the nails permanently darkened. A small scar curves over his wrist, probably from an old chisel slip. These aren't gym muscles. They don't swell. They hold, and they endure. When he pauses, he wipes his forehead with a sleeve, then takes a slow look at the field beyond. The land is his mirror, uneven, stubborn, full of life and trouble. He doesn't complain. He never has. Complaints don't repair fences. They don't feed children. He moves down the line, replacing each slat one by one. Occasionally, he grunts as he shifts his weight. One leg, you realize, bears a limp that wasn't there weeks ago. He likely twisted something not badly enough to stop him, but enough that he favors it now. That limp will likely stay for months, maybe forever. You notice that as he works, there's a rhythm not just in movement, but in breathing, in effort. He works like someone who knows when to push and when to pause. There's no wasted energy, no flourish, just task after task after task, completed with quiet resolve. By midday, the fence stands straight again, and he walks its length, running one hand across the top rail. There's pride in that motion, not boastful, just satisfied. In a life where little is easy, fixing something broken is a rare and silent triumph. He eats bread and cheese under the shade of a tree, sitting with his back against the trunk. His knees are pulled up slightly, one arm draped over them. His eyes drift closed for a few minutes. Not sleep exactly, just a moment of rest that he's learned to take when it appears. In the distance, you hear children shouting. He stands again, slower now, and walks toward the sound. One of the boys has climbed too high into a tree and is now frozen in place. Without panic, the man approaches, speaks calmly, and reaches up with his arms outstretched. "Come," he says, and the boy slides cautiously into his grasp. He lifts the child easily, as if his body hasn't been worked to its limit, as if it doesn't hurt. Because here, strength isn't something you feel. It's something you give. Back at the cottage, the man sharpens his tools. He sits by the fire again, hands moving steadily over each blade. He doesn't talk, doesn't hum, just works. The light from the hearth outlines his profile, cheekbones, sharp jaw, square nose, straight and slightly flattened. His ears are wind-burned, his neck thick. His skin has the uneven tone of someone who has spent every season outdoors through sun, snow, and rain. At one point, he winces. His back flares again. He shifts, adjusts, lets out a single breath, then continues, because there's no one else to do it. That night when he lays down, you watch how carefully he settles onto the straw. One arm over his chest, one knee drawn up slightly to relieve the pressure in his lower back. His eyes stay open longer tonight. Not troubled, just slow to shut, as if his body is still vibrating with the weight of the day. And you understand truly now what it meant to be a man in the medieval world. It meant carrying everything wood-water fences, children pain, and never setting it down completely. It meant strength without celebration. It meant motion without relief. And somehow, through it all, never stopping. The sky outside is thick with low-hanging clouds, the kind that promise rain by evening. Still, the man is already awake, slipping into his boots with a slow press of heel and toe. His movements are a touch more careful today. His joints feel the weather before it arrives. His wife glances over at him while preparing a simple breakfast, and they exchange a glance. No words, just mutual understanding. There's barley to sow, and the storm won't wait. He slings a sack of seed over one shoulder and takes the hoe in his other hand. The door creaks as he pushes it open, stepping into a morning so quiet it feels suspended. A few birds call. The wind rustles the trees, and you trail behind him once more, watching the way his cloak flutters around legs that move with a steady, unwavering beat. When he reaches the edge of the tilled field, he sets down the sack and begins his task. His stance is wide, knees bent just enough to keep balance. He drags the hoe across the furrows, carving shallow trenches into the damp soil. His arms move in long arcs, every motion honed by years of repetition. The tool is not light, but it moves like an extension of his body. You notice the way his spine curves as he bends, not just from the motion, but from habit, perhaps a hint of scoliosis, or the permanent slump of a man who's carried sacks and beams and yokes since he was a boy. His shoulders roll forward as he works, protecting his chest from the wind. His neck disappears slightly into the line of his shoulders, a body evolving to serve its use. As he sows the seed, you can see the concentration in his brow. His hand dips into the sack, then sweeps forward in wide gestures, flinging the grain with practiced rhythm over and over, down the row, then back again. His fingers are dark with soil. The grain clings to his skin. He pauses only to wipe his nose on his sleeve, then continues. A neighbor passes with a cart and waves. The man nods, raising a hand briefly, then returns to his work. His face is not unfriendly, but there's little time for small talk. Every hour of daylight matters, especially when the rain threatens to turn the field to sludge. By midday, the air is thick and heavy. He removes his cloak, ties it around his waist, and wipes the sweat from his brow. You see the way his tunic clings to his chest. His ribs press faintly beneath the fabric, not from weakness, but from years of limited food. There's strength there still, but it's lean and coiled, not full or flush. He has enough to do what needs doing, never more. When he kneels to adjust a furrow, you notice the patches on his trousers, rough fabric stitched by hand knees, reinforced by years of wear. His thighs press against the earth, and you see the bulge of muscle beneath. Not large, but hard. Dense from lifting and walking and climbing. His hands push into the soil, and for a moment, he simply breathes. Later, as he walks the edge of the field, inspecting his work, his limp returns, subtle but there. His left foot drags just a little. He adjusts his weight without thinking. There's no complaint, just a shift in balance, a natural response to a body that is never fully healed. Back at the cottage, he scrubs his hands clean in a basin. The water runs dark, but the dirt never fully leaves. The lines of his palms are etched deep. You could read his entire life in those creases. Years of labor, every season, every harvest. He sits by the fire to rest, and you study his frame again. Not tall, perhaps just under 5'5", but wide across the back. His chest is barrel-shaped, but not out of vanity. It's the result of hauling sacks, pulling carts, wrestling animals, working in wind and storm. His calves are thick, his feet broad, splayed slightly from years of walking in poor shoes. His posture isn't straight, but it's balanced. He looks like someone built by the elements, rounded by wind, hardened by sun, bent by burden. In the evening, a storm does arrive. Thunder shakes the shutters and the rain beats down in waves. The man steps outside to check the roof, moving barefoot across the muddy ground with surprising ease. He lifts his arms to tighten the thatch, water pouring over his shoulders, soaking him to the skin. But he doesn't stop. Not until he's sure nothing will leak. Later, he changes into a dry tunic and sits again, this time with a cup of warmed ale in hand. His eyes are half-lidded, his legs stretched before him. He's not asleep, but close. The fire crackles softly. His chest rises and falls in a slow, even rhythm. You see now more clearly than ever that this man's body was not designed, it was weathered, like driftwood, like a stone in a river. It wasn't shaped in a moment or even a year. It was carved over decades by wind and time and toil. And if you asked him what he looked like, he probably wouldn't know how to answer, because he doesn't see his body as something to describe. He sees it as something to use. Rain gives way to mist the next morning, and the world feels hushed under a veil of damp quiet. The man's breath forms small clouds in the cold air as he steps out of the doorway. His cloak is still drying near the fire, so he wraps a coarse shawl over his shoulders and sets off toward the well. The bucket handle creaks in his hand. You can tell it's not the metal that's worn, it's the grip. Decades of fingers tightening, loosening, hauling. The path is slick and his steps are deliberate. He doesn't slip. He knows this ground by heart. Every dip, every bend, every root that juts just slightly too high. When he reaches the well, he lowers the bucket with smooth precision. The rope winds around his wrist as he cranks, and you watch the flex of his forearm. With each turn, fibers tight, movements slow and even. Water sloshes up and he lifts it in one motion, the kind that speaks of familiarity, not effort. Back at the house, he pours the water into the barrel, wipes his hands on his tunic, and glances at the sky. Still no sun. Just the pale, colorless morning. It doesn't matter. The pigs still need feeding. The tools still need mending. The day doesn't ask if he's sore. It simply waits. He stoops to retrieve a broken hoe handle and sets up beside the shed. His fingers move over the cracked wood like a sculptor. Not delicate, but steady. A man who's repaired 1,000 things with scraps and patience. He saws, shaves, binds, and tests. You notice how he squints vision, not what it once was. But he makes no mention of it. Just adjusts, tilts his head, narrows his gaze, works slower. Later, as he sharpens his tools, the whetstone sings its familiar rasp against the metal. You sit beside him and watch the repetitive motion draw, lift, reset. His fingers are thick, almost stubby, but the knife glides smoothly along the edge. You see the scars again. Little ones, dozens of them, lines across knuckles, a burn along his wrist, a nail blackened at the base, long dead but still hanging on. His hands are a map of every mistake he didn't have time to mourn. Inside, the children argue over who tracked in mud, and the man's voice cuts through the noise, firm, not loud. Authority, not anger. The boys fall quiet. He doesn't need to raise his voice. His presence commands more than sound ever could. He kneels to mop the mess himself, not because no one else can, but because he does what needs doing. Always has. In the afternoon, he takes a short walk around the edge of the village. You follow as his boots leave prints in the damp grass, and you catch the moment when he pauses to rest against a stone wall. His breathing is heavy, Not ragged, just deeper than it should be. He rubs his chest absent-mindedly. It's likely a cold, or the weight of age beginning to press in. He doesn't say so. Won't say so. He pushes away from the wall and keeps walking. You see others in the distance, young men lean and still growing. Their bodies are straighter, their skin smoother, but they look to him as they pass, with respect, with understanding. Because they know what he is, they are still becoming, if they're lucky. By the time he returns home, his shoulders slump a bit more. His fingers fumble slightly as he unlatches the door. His eyes have a faint sheen, not from tears, but from wind and time. He eats slowly that night, chews longer, rubs his temples now and then. But when the fire dims and the youngest child pulls a blanket over his knees, the man smiles faintly. It's a rare expression. One corner of his mouth lifts just barely. And you realize something, this isn't a man who's miserable. He's tired, yes. Worn down. But not broken. There's peace in repetition. Pride in usefulness. Even if the world never thanks him. He lays down with one hand under his head, the other resting on his stomach. His fingers twitch slightly, perhaps dreaming of work, even in sleep. His body curves inward like a comma, always ready to rise again. And though no one may record his name, you will remember the way he moved, the way he endured, the way he filled a space not with words, but with presence, and how his body, weathered, scarred, bowed, never once asked for praise. It only asked to keep going. Another morning, another chore. This time he's repairing the thatched roof above the animal shed. Rain had slipped through the corners last week, leaving damp straw and an unhappy cow. It's not the kind of job you wait on. So he climbs the ladder slow and careful, every rung, testing his knees, his hips, the strength in his calves. From the ground, you can see the curve of his spine under the tunic, the way his torso leans to keep balance. There's no elegance in his climb, just function. Each movement is cautious and weighted, but also practiced. You suspect he's patched this roof dozens of times. The same straw, the same wind, the same bruises on his shins. On top, crouched like a gargoyle, he begins to weave bundles of thatch into the old frame. His hands move with rhythm and memory. Fingers like knots. Wrists banded with veins. He presses down, ties, pulls tight again and again. He doesn't need to see himself. You see him enough for both of you. The wind picks up, tugging at his sleeves, trying to unseat him. He shifts his weight instinctively, like a man who's spent too many hours in too many precarious positions. His balance isn't perfect, but it's good enough. It always has been. His thighs hold him steady. His core, though not sculpted, anchors him like a pillar. As he works, you catch a glimpse of his profile in the morning light. A broad nose slightly bent to one side, a brow that never fully relaxes. Eyes set deep under thick brows. Not striking features by modern standards, but unmistakably strong. Weathered, solid. And then the ladder shifts slightly below. He notices, presses his boot against the rafter and keeps going. No fear, just focus. Later, after climbing down and stretching out his legs, he sits with a bowl of broth in his lap. His hand trembles just slightly, fatigue or maybe cold. He eats slowly, methodically, staring into the fire with that blank look people get when their thoughts are too simple or too tired to speak aloud. You notice how he rolls his shoulder again, rotating it like something's slightly out of place. Maybe it is. There's no physician for that. Only time. And time here does not hurry. In the afternoon, he helps his neighbor lift a fallen beam. The two men grunt as they hoist it upright, and you hear a soft curse escape his lips as something tweaks in his back. He doesn't stop. He holds his corner, waits for the wedge to be placed, and only then steps away, rubbing his lower spine once before reaching for another tool. This is what aging looks like here, not in decades, but in repetitions. Not in candles on a cake, but in the accumulation of steps, lifts, carries, cuts, and cold nights. His body is older than his age. That's just the truth of it. And still, he teaches the youngest how to swing an axe later that day. Stands behind the boy, adjusts his grip, sets the blade's path. The child struggles, misses the mark, fumbles. The man doesn't scold. He corrects, shows again. Swings once cleanly, not with force, but with understanding. That's what his body is now, a vessel of knowledge. It remembers angles, balances the soft bend of green wood and the brittle snap of dry branches. He doesn't need diagrams. His joints are the archive. At supper, when the family gathers, he eats with quiet efficiency. His chair creaks beneath his weight, not because he's large, but because everything in this world is a little fragile, a little worn. Just like him. When his wife reaches for his hand, you notice how he gives it without hesitation. Rough skin against rough skin. Two halves of the same endurance. And then as the fire fades and the children yawn, he steps outside alone. The moon glows faintly above the tree line. His silhouette cuts a thick, uneven line against the sky. He stands with hands on hips. Not proud, not pensive, just present. You study the curve of his legs, the broadness of his chest, the slight forward lean of his posture. The man is not beautiful in the way statues are, but he is beautiful in truth. He is built for the world he was given, scar by scar, stride by stride, bend by bend, and tomorrow when the work begins again, so will he. Because the body of a medieval man wasn't just a shell. It was a tool, a language, a history, and his still speaks. The frost arrives quietly, painting the edges of the windows and the rim of the well in brittle white. Winter has made its entrance, and with it comes a new set of burdens. The man rises earlier now, before the sun even hints at returning. His breath hangs thick in the air, as he steps outside, arms wrapped tight around his chest, shoulders already curled inward from the cold. The animals come first. Always. He trudges through the icy mud boots, stiff every step, a muted crunch. You can hear the stiffness in his knees, the faint crackle of old cartilage and effort. He opens the barn door, and the warmth of the animals spills out, along with the sharp scent of hay manure and steam. He moves slowly now, not out of caution, but from the sheer density of cold inside his bones. His hands, though large and strong, fumble a little with the frozen latch. Fingers don't work the same after decades of frostbite nips and split knuckles. He massages them briefly, then feeds the pigs, breaks the ice over the water trough with a solid crack of wood, and spreads fresh straw. Every task is heavier in winter. The ropes are stiff, the tools are cold, and the air bites through layers of wool. But he works on breath fogging in front of him. His face is red from the cold, cheeks chapped, nose, pink eyes squinting. The tip of one ear bears a small scar from some past winter. You can guess what happened. Everyone here has had some part of them bitten by frost. Later, he chops firewood. He stands beside the chopping block, feet, wide axe gripped tight. The muscles in his arms tense as he lifts, and with one clean motion, the log splits. Then another, and another. The repetition doesn't seem to bore him. It centers him. This is where his body knows exactly what to do. This is his tempo. As he swings, you see his outline against the snow. He looks stockier now in his winter tunic, broader. But beneath the wool, the same shape remains: rounded shoulders, thick waist, bowed legs, large hands. A frame that has never known luxury, only necessity. He pauses, after an hour leans on the axe and exhales deeply. You notice how his chest doesn't expand as much as it used to. Breaths are shallower, slower. Maybe it's the cold. Maybe it's age. But he rolls his neck and continues as always. That night around the fire, he carves a new spoon. You sit close, watching the way his fingers glide along the grain. Despite the roughness, they move with care. There's no rush. His hands remember this motion, just like they remember how to wrap a sprained ankle or bind a splint or skin a rabbit or lift a child without waking them. You study the rest of him here in the firelight. His legs are stretched out before him, ankles crossed. One foot twitches every so often, as if responding to an old injury. His knees are lumpy and swollen. His calves are dotted with little white scars. His neck has a thick roll of muscle where it meets his back. And when he shifts, you can see the faint bump of a vertebra that's always stuck out just a bit more than it should. There's nothing symmetrical about him. One shoulder is higher. One eye slightly droops. One hand grips tighter. But nothing is broken. It's just the shape of a life that has never once let up. He smiles faintly when the youngest child brings him a blanket, and you watch how gently he accepts it. This isn't a man hardened beyond tenderness. He's just learned where and when it fits. Before bed, he kneels briefly to stoke the fire. His joints crack like old branches. He grunts softly, not from pain, but from the simple act of moving a body that has earned every creak. Then he straightens, stretches once, and lays down. He sighs deeply as he pulls the blanket over his chest. His beard catches the light from the embers. His eyes are nearly closed already. And you realize you've now seen every part of him. The calluses, the bruises, the shape his life has carved into his limbs. This is what a medieval man looked like, not just in form, but in function. Not idealized, not immortalized in paint or poem. Just used. Completely humbly and enduringly used, and somehow still standing. The snow deepens overnight, blanketing the earth in silence. The man steps out into a world smoothed and softened, but his own body remains as worn and rugged as ever. The contrast is stark, his figure all furrows and bends against the pure, untouched white. He breathes into cupped hands, rubbing warmth into fingers that no longer tolerate cold like they used to. Today, the work is less urgent. No planting, no mending, no building. Just tending, watching, surviving. He walks the edge of his land boots, crunching through snowdrifts, each footstep a small crater. The wind whips across the open field, and his cloak flaps hard against his back. He's bundled in layers, wool tunic, hide coat, scarf, hood, but still the cold cuts in. You see him stoop a little further. Shoulders hunched, not from fatigue, but from defense. His body has learned how to shield itself. At the pasture, he checks the fence line again, running one hand along the top rail. His glove slips, and for a moment his bare skin touches the ice-covered wood. He doesn't flinch, just wipes the frost away and continues. The sheep gather near, their breaths fogging the air. He mutters to them quietly, nothing elaborate, just presence. They know his voice. They trust him. Back at home, he crouches to light the hearth again. You watch him move like someone with an internal blueprint, every log placed precisely, every coal stirred just so. His fingers tremble slightly now, the joints thickened with age or frost or both, but they are steady enough. He sits before the fire for a long time. No task in his lap, no motion in his hands, just stillness. The quiet kind earned over years of noise. His face is unreadable, neither sad nor content, simply settled. Eyes half closed, shoulders relaxed. He's not waiting for anything. He just is. In this light, you see every wrinkle around his eyes, each deep line across his forehead. His beard is more gray now than brown. His eyebrows bushy and unbothered. His cheeks are ruddy from cold, and age, his nose broad and red-tipped. His lips, chapped and dry, are turned slightly downward, not from mood, but from habit. The weight of expression carried too long. As evening falls, he joins the family at the table. The meal is simple, boiled root vegetables, a bit of salted meat, hard bread softened in broth. He eats slowly, but without complaint. When the child beside him asks for another piece of turnip, he hands it over without hesitation. His hands still shake a little, but he never drops it. And then after the bowls are cleared and the shutters drawn tight, he does something rare. He laughs. It's not loud or long, just a breathy chuckle at something one of the children said. But it softens his whole face. You glimpse for a moment the man he once was at 20, before the limp, before the shoulder stiffened, before the weather carved itself into his spine. The light in his eyes lingers for only a moment, but it's enough. That night, he lies down with a heavy exhale. One hand folded behind his head, the other resting across his chest. His body stretches only so far now. His legs curl. His back finds the same familiar ache. But it's all known. It's all worn in. And as he closes his eyes, you understand finally and fully what medieval men looked like. They weren't statues. They weren't stories. They were tools of survival. Bent, scarred, uneven, but enduring. They bore the shape of burden, and somehow, even after all the weight, they still looked like home. Now that your eyes are heavy, and your mind has wandered through fields and frost, let yourself settle into this quiet. The man you followed today isn't just one man, he's the shape of thousands. He's the form that history forgot to sculpt. He's the tired shadow behind the grand portraits and the noble tales. His size not remarkable, his face not famous, but his life, the way he moved, the way he carried time in his joints and strength in his silence, was monumental in its own quiet way. He didn't speak much. Most didn't. But if his body could talk, it would whisper stories of lifting what others dropped, of walking paths worn deep by duty, of rising each morning before the sun, just to give warmth to someone else. And now, in the stillness of your room, let that image settle around you like a second blanket. Imagine the firelight flickering against the wooden walls, the soft creak of straw under his shifting weight, the breath that slows until even sleep forgets to disturb it. You don't have to carry anything now. You don't have to fix the roof or mend the fence. You don't have to hold up the world. You just have to rest. Let your breath match his slow, deep familiar. You've walked his world. Now let him keep watch for a while. Drift. Float. And remember, the strongest things in history were never the loudest. They were the ones who endured in silence. Just like you. Like